The rain came down in sheets, turning the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina, into dark rivers lit only by passing headlights and flashes of lightning. The storm had been building all day, and by evening it unleashed its full fury. Inside Westside Memorial Hospital, things were running as usual, until the lights flickered once, then died completely. A deafening silence replaced the usual hum of machinery. Seconds later, red emergency lights dimly lit the hallways. Nurses scrambled with flashlights, and doctors moved quickly to secure patients. One of the nurses yelled, "What's going on with the generators?" Another replied, "They're not kicking in." Upstairs in the ICU, machines began to beep furiously. A premature baby on a ventilator was losing life support power by the second. Down in surgery, a team working on a patient had to halt mid-procedure, their tools frozen in place as the room darkened. The backup generators had failed. In the hospital's basement, the maintenance team worked frantically. Sparks flew as they tried to rewire a junction box, shouting over each other. Sweat dripped down their faces, not from heat, but from pressure. The chief of maintenance muttered, "We did all the checks last week. This shouldn't be happening." The administrator on call was on the phone with City Emergency Services. "We need help. We're running out of time." Outside, just beyond the hospital's entrance, a motorcycle skidded to a stop. A teen girl pulled off her helmet, water dripping from her soaked jacket. She looked no older than 16. From the back of the bike, she pulled out a worn tool bag. With calm determination, she walked through the emergency entrance, dodging hospital staff running in every direction. No one paid her any mind at first. She blended in like just another visitor caught in the chaos. But she didn't stop at the waiting room. She moved purposefully through the halls, turning corners as if she'd been there before. A security guard finally noticed her. "Hey, this area's restricted. Who are you?" She stopped, looked him in the eye, and replied calmly, "Mechanic, I know what's wrong with your generator." The guard stared at her, confused. You're just a kid. "I helped build that model with my dad. I can fix it." Before he could stop her, she walked past him, gripping her tool bag tighter as she headed toward the lower level. Staff and maintenance workers noticed her but were too overwhelmed to argue. In the generator room, the scene was one of utter confusion. Wires hung loose, control panels flashed red, and the diesel system sat completely dead. The mechanics huddled around it looked exhausted and defeated. Then she stepped in. "You're overloading the reset loop," she said quickly. "You've got to bypass the breaker chain and isolate the ignition starter." "Who are you?" one of the techs asked. "I'm Emma," she replied. "My father installed this system when the hospital was rebuilt. I've worked on these since I was 10. One of the senior techs raised an eyebrow. "You think you can fix what a whole team of engineers couldn't?" Emma dropped to one knee, unzipped her tool bag, and began working. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Within seconds, she was in motion, her hands flying across the panel, tracing wires, flipping breakers, unscrewing panels, and reconnecting relays. Her mind was focused, her expression calm. She had done this before, maybe not in a hospital, but in every repair shop and emergency site her father used to take her to. Back upstairs, monitors continued to flicker. A nurse pressed her hand on a baby's chest, trying to keep oxygen flowing manually. Doctors stood frozen, watching the seconds tick down. In the silence, everyone hoped for a miracle. And just below them, in the dark belly of the hospital, that miracle had already arrived. Emma's hands moved fast, every motion calculated and confident. The generator room was filled with flickering red lights, the air tense with frustration and fear. Around her, the maintenance team watched in silence, unsure whether to stop her or let her work. No one really understood how this teenage girl had walked in like she belonged there. But something in the way she handled the equipment told them she knew exactly what she was doing. "Grab me a multimeter," she said sharply to a technician. He hesitated, then handed it over. Emma scanned the fuse connections and traced a faulty grounding wire back to its origin. Her fingers paused on a fried circuit that had caused a chain reaction through the emergency system. She let out a breath. "The main safety relay failed," she muttered. "The panel locked out the ignition to prevent fire. It's a security feature, but most people don't know how to override it manually." One of the older engineers knelt beside her. "How do you know all this?" Emma didn't answer directly. "Just trust me, I've seen this before." With a screwdriver in one hand and pliers in the other, she rerouted the ignition control and isolated the damaged components. Sparks jumped as she clipped a bypass line into place. Her jacket was soaked, her boots muddy, and her hair plastered to her face. But she didn't flinch. Then the moment came. She adjusted a final setting on the fuel system, gave one last look at the configuration, and pressed the ignition switch. For a second, nothing happened. Then the diesel generator roared to life, rattling the room with a thunderous hum. Lights surged back through the hospital. Upstairs, ICU monitors lit up. The premature baby's ventilator restarted with a steady rhythm. Nurses gasped and cheered. In the operating room, surgeons resumed their work as overhead lights flickered back on. Doctors looked around in disbelief. "Power's back!" someone yelled. In the generator room, the team stood frozen, staring at Emma as the generator ran smoothly, humming like it was brand new. She stood up slowly, wiped her hands on her jacket, and finally smiled, just a little. "How did you?" one of the techs began to ask. Emma looked at him. "My dad built these systems for hospitals like this one. I worked with him for years before he passed away. He made sure I knew how to fix things when no one else could." A silence hung over the room. Even the older, experienced engineers couldn't believe what had just happened. A girl they didn't even know had solved a problem they couldn't fix in over an hour, and possibly saved lives in the process. The hospital director arrived minutes later, breathless. Who got it running? Who fixed it? All eyes turned to Emma. She shrugged, just helped a little. Before they could say more, she grabbed her tool bag and headed back the way she came. No demands for credit, no request for thanks. Just like her father, she did her job quietly and disappeared. Later that night, when things had settled, the hospital's head of security reviewed the surveillance footage to identify her. What they found left everyone speechless. Emma Martinez, 17 years old, daughter of Robert Martinez, the same engineer who had installed emergency systems across dozens of hospitals in the state. He had died 2 years earlier in a car accident. Since then, Emma had quietly worked part-time at a local auto shop, rarely talking about her past. No one had known she'd inherited not just her father's skill, but his heart too. She didn't save the hospital for glory. She didn't do it for attention. She did it because people needed her. And when the world went dark, she was the spark that brought the light back.